Hi, hello. I read A Room of One's Own by Virginia Woolf, where Virginia Woolf is basically saying intellectual freedom requires material things. A room of one's own and like 500 a year. This essay is like 100 years old almost. It was published in 1929. She basically gave these two lectures at two universities about women in fiction, and the result was this essay. It starts with a but. She's already giving you a counter argument, but hey, this, that. She goes on to talk about how she doesn't like the I, the egoistical, phallic I. So she basically says, oh, call me anything, call me Mary Seaton, call me Mary Beaton, whatever. And you and I think, oh, those are just random names that she mentioned, but no. There were like four Marys, four women who were descendants of Mary, Queen of Scots, and one of them apparently had an affair with the Queen's husband, and then she got pregnant, and she basically committed infanticide, and then she was hanged, but also that might not be accurate. This is not in the book. This is just, I'm kind of a freak, so I when I read a book, I read about the book, and it's kind of important to read about, especially like these old books, right, where these people are coming from and what kind of life they've had. Like Virginia herself, for example, she was not educated. Like she came from a literary family, right, and her brothers went to Oxford, and like she had access to her father's library and stuff, and she was pretty privileged. Yeah, she had tutors and stuff, but no formal education. Like later on she would go to King's College, but no formal education. And she didn't like that, even when her brother's friends, these men who were educated at Oxford and stuff would come, and she would always feel like they were looking down upon her. In her teenage, both her parents die, and then they moved to which they considered there would be the least upholstery and mahogany and curtains and stuff. So these siblings, they move and they form this society, and they have this intellectual conversation and stuff. Virginia Woolf's sister actually goes on to become a painter, and both the sisters would marry people from that group. Virginia marries Leonard, and Leonard is kind of cute, like she writes a letter to him saying, oh, if we can go on being like how we are right now, let's get married. She was a mentally ill person, and she would be very, very anxious and very, very nervous when her books were coming out. Like they would privately publish these books. She left a note before she killed herself, and in that note she wrote to Leonard that no two people have been happier than we were. Back to the book. So the book is divided into 6 parts. She goes to these 2 lectures, and it's interesting. The first lecture she went to with her husband and her niece, and the second lecture she her lover of same sex. Back in the book, she goes to these 2 colleges, and she is denied entry in a library. And then she eats at the men's college, and it's a feast, it's really good. And then the women's college, because it doesn't get any funding, has dry ass biscuits. She's having this conversation, oh, I wish if our mothers had some fortune, they would have left that fortune to the things that they believe in, to their colleges and stuff. Why did our mothers not do business and stuff? And if our mothers had money and they went into business, they started, they had an education, would we even be present? Because we're like the 13th kid that our mother gave birth to. Could a woman have written like Shakespeare in Shakespeare's time, right? So she goes on to invent a fictional sister for Shakespeare, Judith Shakespeare, and in reality I think it was Shakespeare's daughter whose name was Judith, and then she died, whatever. But these little exercises, and they are very fruitful in a way. Like, oh, if Shakespeare had a sister in his own time, Shakespeare would have been allowed to go and study, while the sister, she had all that talent, like the equal amount of talent as Shakespeare, but then she wouldn't have been allowed to study, and she might have run away. Even like Tolstoy, would a woman have written Tolstoy? Would she have been able to, right? And we are exploring this, and we are basically coming to a conclusion that, hey, if women were educated, if women were given the opportunity to travel, to explore the world, a woman might have written like Tolstoy. Like she talks about Jane Eyre and Charlotte Bronte and Jane Austen, how these were middle class women. A middle class woman did not have her own room, her own space. So Jane Austen wrote in her living room with interruptions. Jane Austen also wrote in secrecy. Jane Austen famously had the hinges of her door unoiled, so if someone comes, they would be a loud creak. And I don't completely 100% agree with Virginia on every point. Like, I don't personally think there is anything wrong with writing with anger and resentment. I want to read your writing which reflects your anger, resentment towards your society, towards, how you're feeling. She basically criticizes Charlotte Bronte for being so angry, like that bleeds into her writing, and somehow the writing is not as good. And Emily Bronte is better at it. And she got ample criticism for it, apparently. But at the same time, I also understand in order to make your point, you should be calm about it. In our society, we historically antagonize, we dismiss the angry woman. Hysterical is a word. Hysteria means uterus, and then you basically use it as hysterical. The mad woman trope. That's one thing I kind of observed here. Like, Virginia Woolf doesn't say, I hate men. In reading Lolita in Tehran, Azhar Nafisi never says, I hate Islam. Because the moment you say that, you turn away a curious reader. What if I am a Muslim and I am willing to listen to your point of view? Okay, how does it feel? And the first thing you say is, I hate Islam, actually. So that turns them away. You have to make them stay for a little while to hear what you have to say. It's good if you kind of say, hey, this is how it feels for me. Instead of, oh, I hate it. Azhar Nafisi actually says they used Islam as a tool for all the things that they did. She had a very nuanced way of looking at it. It's very important what you say, but it's also very important what you choose not to say. But again, I want to read your anger and your resentment. Those are real human feelings that we all feel, and they make us human. So I want to read that. And I am being contradictory, I guess. And Virginia Woolf was also being kind of contradictory when she said, I want to hear more voices, like more women writing, and writing in a way a woman writes. Like, you don't need to write it like a man. But then she also goes on to, and this is very confusing, I did not understand this, like how Shakespeare is androgynous and Shelley has no sex and Proust is more feminine. This was 100 years ago. It's okay. And she herself says it, like, maybe I would sound outdated, but it's kind of sad that, no, you're still relevant. You're still very much relevant. Although in present day times, apparently women publish more books, women authors, than men do. The readership imbalance is also interesting, how women readers read women more. And she says maybe Anonymous for a long period in history was a woman, and she was very interested in Anonymous. Like, all of this, like not having the egoistical I narrator is also reflected in her other works. But Virginia has been kind of funny at times, and especially as the book goes by, you're just charmed by her and you want to hear what she says. She is kind of like, everything is that deep type of a girl. And yeah, tell me more. Let's sit in our bedrooms and think about, okay, what would have happened if this happened, and like, what do you think? The ending is quite beautiful. It basically is a call for action. She also talks about how if I write a book, it's not because of individual genius, it's more so thanks to all the people that came before me, all the women that came before me. Skill, talent, they need to be nurtured. You need education. All these people were kind of well off. These writers that you can think of all came from well-to-do families, at least well-to-do enough that they could go to university and stuff, So if you go back and if you see, you need material things to nurture intellectual genius, or it will die, it will not prosper. Virginia Woolf likes placing contradictory things besides each other, even in Mrs. Dalloway, and she uses semicolon to do that. Even here, women should write like women, and we should all write in an androgynous way. Both views are present, and I don't even know what androgynous writing is. I guess to use all of your intellectual and feeling and whatnot, although I don't particularly think that feminine and masculine is what we think of is feminine and masculine. Even in like Indian mythology, the feminine and the masculine, they exist. She's basically saying it exists in the body, the male and the female. Does it exist in the mind as well, the male and the female? Like a great exercise, moving through the time periods, coming to present and questioning things and having hope. The ending is beautiful. It will make you cry. She also wrote another essay, 3 Guineas, which I haven't read, but is kind of relevant to this, I think. This one is highly recommended. Feminist literature. Feminist as in not for the women only. Feminist meaning we are talking about equality, the same opportunities to be given to all people. Read it. Let me know your thoughts.